When you look at your life today, ask yourself a very sincere question. Have you truly outgrown the version of yourself that brought you to this point? Or are you still living in habits, attitudes, and mindsets that God has been calling you to release long ago? Many of us are praying for a new season, yet we are holding on to an old identity. We say we want change, but we refuse to change the person who wakes up in the morning, who speaks, who reacts, who thinks, who chooses. My people, listen, your future cannot enter the place where your old self is still sitting comfortably. If you want to rise, you must force yourself to outgrow the version of yourself that was never designed to carry the weight of your destiny. Growth is not always peaceful. Transformation is not always gentle. Sometimes God allows pressure, challenges, delays, disappointment, and rejection because He wants you to outgrow your comfort zone. You may think the enemy is attacking you, but sometimes it is your old self refusing to die. It is your old thinking refusing to surrender. It is your old habits refusing to bow. You are asking for a new level while still fighting with old demons. Demons created by your own choices, your own fears, your own patterns. Your old self is comfortable, familiar, predictable, but your destiny is not found in comfort. It is found in becoming someone you have never been before. There are people here today who have been praying for promotion, but the version of you that is praying is not qualified to handle the promotion you desire. There are people asking for breakthroughs, but the version of you asking is not disciplined enough to manage the blessing. There are people begging for new opportunities, but the version of you knocking is still carrying attitudes that would destroy the opportunity if it arrived. When God delays something in your life, He is not denying you. He is transforming you. Heaven will never deliver a blessing to a version of you that cannot sustain it. When you hear the word force, do not think of violence. Think of discipline. Think of self-confrontation. Think of intentional choices. You cannot drift into growth. You cannot casually enter maturity. You cannot sleepwalk into destiny. You must force yourself to pray when your flesh wants to sleep. You must force yourself to forgive when your heart wants revenge. You must force yourself to stay calm when your emotions want to explode. You must force yourself to be disciplined when your old self wants comfort and excuses. Growth is uncomfortable because it requires breaking agreement with the person you used to be. The biggest prison on earth is not built with walls or iron bars. It is built with old habits, old thinking, old wounds, old fears. Many people are not trapped by demons. They are trapped by the version of themselves they refuse to outgrow. They want God to deliver them, yet they still behave like victims. They want God to promote them, yet they still speak the language of limitation. They want God to elevate them, yet they still walk around with their heads bowed as though the world owes them pity. My people, listen, the old version of you cannot enter the promised land. The old version of you is not meant to survive the next season of your life. There comes a time in your journey when you must decide that you cannot keep living as yesterday's version of yourself. You must reach a point where you say, enough is enough. I am done with the mindset that made me weak. I am done with the fear that held me hostage. I am done with the anger that poisoned my peace. I am done with the laziness that delayed my purpose. I am done with the excuses that stole my progress. I am done with the people who keep feeding the worst in me. Because if you do not force yourself to outgrow the old version of you, that old version will sabotage everything God wants to give you. People often ask, why does God not change me instantly? Because God does not force transformation on anyone. He gives you conviction, instruction, opportunity, but you must do the work. You must wrestle with your weaknesses. You must break the habits that are breaking your destiny. You must confront the truth about yourself. You must choose discipline over convenience. You must train your mind to think differently. Deliverance is God removing what you cannot remove. But discipline is you removing what you refuse to carry into your future. Many people are delivered spiritually, but still stuck mentally because they want God to do all the work while they remain passive inside their comfort zone. Your old version was built out of survival. You reacted to life with fear because you were wounded. You protected yourself through anger because you were hurt. You pushed people away because you were betrayed. You accepted little because you thought you deserved little. That old version of you was not evil. It was simply shaped by circumstances that were meant to be temporary. But listen, God cannot allow you to carry a survival mindset into a destiny season. Survival thinking will make you shrink in a place where you are meant to expand. Survival thinking will make you hide in a place where you are meant to shine. Survival thinking will make you overthink opportunities that were sent to lift you. There are people here today who pray with passion, but live with hesitation. They have vision, but no discipline. Desire, but no consistency. Dreams, but no self-control. They wait for strength to come before they act. Not realizing the strength they want only comes after they act. You do not grow first and then change. You change first and then growth begins. You do not outgrow the old version of you by waiting. You outgrow it by deciding. You take the first step even when your legs tremble. You start the journey even when your mind doubts. You show up even when your emotions resist. As you obey, strength comes. As you persist, maturity comes. As you discipline yourself, transformation comes. I want you to understand something deep today. God is not trying to improve the old you. He is trying to replace it. The old you was shaped by emotion. The new you must be shaped by conviction. The old you reacted to circumstances. The new you responds with wisdom. The old you spoke without thinking. The new you speaks with intention. The old you sought validation. The new you walks in identity. The old you looked for shortcuts. The new you embraces process. The old you complained. The new you creates. The old you compared. The new you commits. You cannot take the old you into the new season and expect supernatural results. Many people are frustrated because the door is not opening. But the door is not opening because the person standing in front of the door is not the person God designed to walk through it. God is waiting for you to outgrow the one who keeps knocking. Your attitude must change. Your habits must change. Your speech must change. Your thinking must change. Your reactions must change. Your priorities must change. Your environment must change. You cannot grow spiritually while holding on to relationships that keep watering your weaknesses. You cannot grow mentally while feeding your mind with poison. You cannot grow emotionally while entertaining people who trigger your old wounds. If you want to know whether you're growing, examine your responses. Growth shows in how quickly you forgive, how calmly you handle pressure, how wisely you choose your words, how consistently you practice discipline, How easily you let go of what no longer serves your purpose. Growth is not measured by how loudly you speak, but by how deeply you think. It is not measured by how many people approve of you, but by how many habits you've replaced. It is not measured by how many times you fall, but by how many times you rise with more wisdom. Forcing yourself to outgrow the old version of you is not a one-day event. It is a lifestyle. It is waking up every morning and choosing who you want to be rather than repeating who you used to be. It is deciding daily which voice you will obey, the voice of fear or the voice of purpose, the voice of excuses or the voice of destiny. Every day is an opportunity to upgrade your character. Every choice is a seed for your future. Every moment of discipline is a step into a new identity. Every sacrifice is a signal to heaven that you are ready for the next level. People around you may not understand your transformation. They may think you are becoming prideful. They may accuse you of changing too much. They may say you're acting differently. Yes, you are acting differently because the old you cannot survive where God is taking you. Do not apologize for outgrowing environments that once tolerated your weaknesses. Do not apologize for choosing peace over chaos. Do not apologize for investing in your growth instead of entertaining mediocrity. Do not apologize for wanting a life that reflects the greatness God placed in you. People who are committed to their old versions will always criticize those who are committed to their new identity. Growth is painful because it requires separation from old beliefs, old excuses, old habits, old environments, even old versions of yourself that once felt comfortable. But nothing grows in comfort. If you stay where you feel safe, you will remain the same. But if you step into the unknown, you become someone new. And destiny is always on the other side of discomfort. When God is preparing you for more, He will stir your spirit, trouble your comfort, expose your weaknesses, test your patience, challenge your faith. Not because He wants to break you, but because He wants to build you into someone who can carry what you've been praying for. You cannot keep saying, this is just who I am. That statement is the anthem of people who fear growth. You are not who you are. You are who you decide to become. If who you are is limiting you, challenge it. If your past is controlling you, confront it. If your emotions are misleading you, discipline them. If your habits are destroying you, replace them. You are not stuck because your life cannot change. You are stuck because you refuse to change yourself. The biggest breakthrough you will ever experience is not in your finances, relationships, or opportunities. It is in your identity. There is a stronger, wiser, more disciplined, more courageous version of you waiting to emerge. But you must allow the old version to die. You must bury the excuses, the fear, the procrastination, the anger, the doubt, the laziness, the indecision. You cannot hold on to dead things and expect life to grow. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, the new you grows. Every time you choose purpose over distraction, the new you grows. Every time you choose faith over fear, the new you grows. Every time you choose wisdom over impulse, the new you grows. My people, listen carefully. You cannot pray for transformation and resist change at the same time. You cannot ask God for elevation while still living on the level of your old thinking. You cannot attract new opportunities while behaving like the old you who wasted opportunities. Transformation requires a decision, a deep, bold, unwavering decision to become someone who aligns with the future you desire. You must force yourself to rise above emotional reactions. Force yourself to break generational habits. Force yourself to silence the negative voices inside you. Force yourself to build consistency even when you feel weak. Force yourself to push when your old self wants to quit. The old version of you was shaped by your past. The new version of you must be shaped by your purpose. The old version was built through pain. The new version must be built through intentional growth. The old version felt unworthy. The new version must walk with confidence. The old version lived by feelings. The new version must live by conviction. The old version feared failure. The new version must embrace learning. The old version blamed circumstances. The new version must take responsibility. The old version survived. The new version must thrive. Transformation is not magic, it is mastery. It is not instant, it is intentional. It is not emotional, it is spiritual, mental and disciplined. And when you finally outgrow the old version of you, you will look back and wonder why you ever thought that small, that limited, that weak, that fearful. You will look back and see how far God has carried you. You will look back and see how many things you survived. You will look back and see how many chains you broke. You will look back and see that the old version of you was never your enemy. It was simply the version that did not know who you were becoming. And this is why you must force yourself to grow, to evolve, to rise, to transform. Because everything God has for you is waiting on the version of you that has the courage to step out of the shell of the past and into the fullness of destiny. Courage is the force that pushes you beyond the limitations of your former self. When you hear the word courage, do not think only of bold moves on the outside. Think of victories on the inside. The most dangerous battles you will ever fight are not with people, not with environments, not with situations. They are with the version of yourself that you have lived with for years. The you that learned fear early. The you that absorbed negativity from your environment. The you that was shaped by rejection, shaped by disappointment, shaped by the voices that told you what you could not be. That version of you does not die gently. It resists. It holds on. It fights back. And the only force strong enough to push you past that version is courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move despite fear. If you wait until you feel no fear before acting, you will never act. If you wait until you are fully confident, fully ready, fully strong, fully prepared, life will pass you by. Every great person you admire, every destiny shifter you study, every trailblazer you respect made decisions while afraid. They walked forward with trembling knees. They obeyed God with shaking hands. They stepped into new levels, unsure of what waited ahead. What separated them from the crowd was not talent or resources, but courage. Courage to challenge the version of themselves that was comfortable, predictable, easy to manage. Courage pushes you into places where your old self cannot survive. Courage takes you into mental heights where fear cannot breathe. Courage opens doors that hesitation keeps locked. Courage breaks habits that comfort keeps alive. Courage is not loud. Sometimes it is a whisper that says, try again. Sometimes it is a quiet push that says, get up. Sometimes it is a gentle reminder that says, you are more than this. But every time courage speaks, destiny moves. Every time courage speaks, your future shifts. Every time courage speaks, your old limitations lose power. Your former self has limits because it was shaped by experiences that wounded you. That version of you reacted to life instead of directing life. It was created in moments when you felt powerless, moments when you felt unheard, moments when you felt unprepared. That version of you learned how to survive in storm. It learned how to endure pain. It learned how to cope with disappointment. But survival is not destiny. Endurance is not purpose. Coping is not calling. You cannot live forever in the mindset that kept you alive in the past. Courage is the force that separates who you used to be from who you are becoming. There are people listening to me right now who have been stuck for years, not because their future is blocked, but because their courage is asleep. They have the potential, they have the ideas, they have the passion, they have the dream. But the courage to act is buried under layers of fear and self-doubt. They tell themselves, I will start when I feel ready. But readiness does not come before courage. Readiness comes after courage. When you begin, strength shows up. When you move, clarity appears. When you act, wisdom flows. When you step out, God steps in. Courage is choosing to grow in a place where your old self wants you to shrink. It is choosing faith when your old self wants you to fear. It is choosing purpose when your old self wants you to procrastinate. It is choosing discipline when your old self wants comfort. It is choosing responsibility when your old self wants excuses. It is choosing vision when your old self wants distraction. Courage is not glamorous. Sometimes it looks like waking up early to work on yourself. Sometimes it looks like saying no to people who drain your strength. Sometimes it looks like letting go of environments that keep you small. Sometimes it looks like walking alone because your destiny does not fit where you used to belong. Courage is the tool through which God reshapes your identity. When you begin to walk in courage, you start to see the world differently. You start to see yourself differently. You begin to understand that you were never as weak as your past made you feel. You begin to realize that the voices that told you you were not enough were lying. You begin to sense that there is more inside you than you ever acknowledged. Courage awakens potential that fear buried. Courage resurrects dreams that insecurity killed. Courage restores confidence that failure stole. Courage is the breath that revives the version of you that God always intended. Your former self is attached to patterns of thinking, patterns of reacting, patterns of living. These patterns were created for protection, not expansion. They helped you survive, but they cannot help you grow. And so when courage comes into your life, the first battle is not with the world, but with these patterns inside you. Your mind will say, stay where it's safe. Courage will say, move forward. Your emotions will say, remember the pain. Courage will say, remember the promise. Your habits will say, this is easier. Courage will say, this is necessary. Your fears will say, you will fail. Courage will say, you will evolve. And every time you choose courage over your internal limitations, the chains of your former self begin to break. There are people who think courage is only needed for big decisions, starting a business, changing careers, leaving toxic relationships, pursuing a dream. But the truth is deeper. Courage is needed in the small decisions that shape your daily identity. Courage is needed to admit you are wrong. Courage is needed to apologize when your pride wants you to justify your actions. Courage is needed to forgive when bitterness feels comfortable. Courage is needed to confront your own attitude. Courage is needed to stay disciplined when nobody is watching. Courage is needed to choose growth over ego. And when you consistently make courageous choices in the small things, you become unstoppable in the big things. Courage pushes you to discover gifts you never knew you had. It pushes you to attempt things you once believed you were unqualified for. It pushes you to take ownership of your life instead of blaming circumstances. It pushes you to break the generational patterns that limited your family for decades. It pushes you to speak when the old you stayed silent. It pushes you to lead when the old you followed. It pushes you to aim higher when the old you settled. It pushes you to face challenges that the old you would have run from. Courage is not just a force, it is a fire. And once that fire begins to burn in your spirit, nothing from your past will be able to extinguish it. You cannot outgrow the old version of you without courage, because every level of growth requires leaving something behind. Sometimes you must leave behind fear. Sometimes you must leave behind excuses. Sometimes you must leave behind people who only understand the old you. Sometimes you must leave behind habits that weaken you. Sometimes you must leave behind environments that limit you. The old version of you will cling to these things because they feel familiar. But courage will help you release them, step out, and embrace the unfamiliar path that leads to destiny. Courage is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes courage is quiet. Sometimes it is the smile you give yourself after a long season of struggle. Sometimes it is the decision to try again after failing. Sometimes it is the patience to wait for God's timing when your old self wants to rush. Sometimes it is the determination to rebuild after everything fell apart. Sometimes it is the strength to believe that your story can still change. Sometimes it is the resilience to stand tall when life pushes you down. The world sees your actions, but God sees your courage behind the actions. And it is that internal courage that determines your external breakthrough. Your former self will always try to remind you of your limitations. You've never done this before. You failed last time. You don't have enough resources. People will laugh at you, are not good enough. You should stay where you are. But courage answers with a different voice. You have everything you need to begin. God is with you. You are more capable than you think. Every great person started somewhere. You were not created to stay small. There is something greater waiting on the other side of fear. When courage speaks, fear loses authority. When courage rises, excuses dissolve. When courage takes over, your old identity begins to crack and fall away. There are moments in your life when courage will ask you to do what your logic cannot understand. It will ask you to step into a new environment where you feel unprepared. It will ask you to begin a journey without knowing the destination. It will ask you to trust God when the path is dark. It will ask you to say yes to something that looks impossible. It will ask you to walk into the unknown with faith instead of waiting for certainty. And in these moments, the old you will tremble, the old you will panic, the old you will whisper, "Stay here where it's safe." But courage will whisper louder. Courage will remind you that destiny never grows in the soil of safety. Courage will remind you that the version of you who stays safe will never meet the version of you who is powerful. Courage is the force that closes the gap between who you are and who you are meant to be. Without courage, potential remains locked. Without courage, ideas remain unexpressed. Without courage, dreams remain fantasies. Without courage, gifts remain buried. Without courage, your life becomes a repetition of yesterday. But when courage takes root inside you, your life begins to evolve. Your confidence grows. Your thinking expands. Your faith strengthens. Your habits improve. Your decisions elevate. Your boundaries sharpen. Your future begins to open. The old you was shaped by fear. The new you will be shaped by courage. The old you questioned everything. The new you moves with conviction. Old you avoided discomfort. The new you embraces growth. The old you relied on others to validate you. The new you knows who you are. The old you settled. The new you pursues destiny. The old you lived in limitation. The new you lives in possibility. And the bridge between these two identities is courage. Your destiny does not require you to be perfect, but it requires you to be courageous. God is not looking for flawless people. He is looking for willing people. People who are willing to take the step even when the path is unclear. People who are willing to rise even when they feel weak. People who are willing to change even when change is uncomfortable. People who are willing to break cycles that no one else in their family broke. People who are willing to become the first, the pioneer, the trailblazer. And what separates the willing from the unwilling is courage. Courage does not eliminate fear. It makes fear irrelevant. Courage does not remove obstacles. It gives you the strength to face them. Courage does not guarantee success. It guarantees growth. Courage does not erase your past. It builds a future that rises above it. And when you begin to live with courage, your former self will no longer have the power to control your decisions, limit your progress, or determine your identity. Courage becomes the driver. Courage becomes the compass. Courage becomes the engine that pulls you into the next dimension of your life.